The year was 1992, and the sun above Venice spilled golden light across the narrow alleys and glistening canals. In the quieter quarter of Cannaregio, where the gondolas moved slower and tourists were fewer, a young man named Giuseppe Moretti wiped sweat from his brow. His fingers were rough from the weight of timber, his palms blistered from days spent working with stone, rope, and old iron nails. He was 23. While his friends dreamed of moving abroad or sipping espresso near Piazza San Marco, Giuseppe had different plans. Plans that required silence, solitude, and stubbornness. He had found it his spot. A forgotten structure near the edge of the canal, once a storehouse for fishing gear, now abandoned. Wooden beams still jutted from the brickwork like broken ribs, and green moss crept up the crumbling walls. But to Giuseppe, it was perfect. He could still hear the old man's voice in his head. Venetian homes aren't built. They're claimed from the water. You build not with your hands, but with your will. That man was Carlo, his late grandfather, a boatmaker known across Cannaregio. Giuseppe used to sit beside him as a boy, legs dangling from the dock, watching as the old man sanded curved planks with precision that felt like magic. His house had smelled of pine and salt, and every window opened to the sigh of the lagoon. Giuseppe wanted to build his life on that same scent. So he began. Morning started before the bells of Madonna dell'Orto rang. With a bag of tools, some salvaged timber from the back of a carpenter's shop, and a few unread books on architecture, he stepped into the decaying structure. There were no blueprints, no mentors, just instinct, memory, and a quiet hunger to create something of his own. He measured with string, not tape. Eyed corners by feel. He listened to the wood when it creaked. If it groaned like pain, it was wrong. If it whispered back, it was right. Passers-by sometimes paused, puzzled. "What's that boy doing in there?" "Fixing ghosts," muttered one old woman with a knowing smirk. But Giuseppe didn't care. Each evening, when the sky turned violet and church bells echoed like slow heartbeats, he'd sit on the edge of the canal, feet nearly touching the water, and gaze at his work. One nail at a time, the bones of a home began to rise. It wasn't just walls he was building. It was defiance. He knew what others said behind his back. You could have gone to university. You could have taken a real job. You're wasting your life on a ruin. But ruins, Giuseppe thought, are only ruins if no one loves them. One night, as rain tapped against the roof like curious fingers, he lit a candle inside the shell of his creation. The wind hissed outside, but inside there was warmth. Not from the flame, but from something older. Something he couldn't quite name. A kind of peace. Giuseppe would never forget that night. Because the next morning he found someone, waiting on the opposite bank of the canal. And that was the moment the story truly began. The morning mist hung low over Cannaregio, curling like pale fingers above the canal's quiet surface. Giuseppe stepped out from the skeleton of his half-built home, a hammer in one hand and a tin cup of black coffee in the other. And there she was. On the opposite bank, standing between two mooring posts, was a girl he had never seen before. Her coat was too elegant for this side of Venice, dark wool, gold buttons, and a red scarf tied loosely around her neck. Her hair, dark as the silt beneath the canal, moved slightly in the breeze. She wasn't looking at the water. She was looking at him. Giuseppe stopped mid-sip. She didn't wave. She didn't speak. She simply watched. He raised his hand in a half-hearted greeting. She gave no reaction. A moment later, she turned and disappeared into the alleyway behind her. Giuseppe blinked. By midday, he had convinced himself he imagined it. The hammer struck nails slower than usual, and his focus wavered with every creak of the gondolas nearby. But the next morning, she was there again. Same place. Same silence. This time, she lingered longer. Then, she dropped something into the water. A small, round object. Barely the size of a coin. Giuseppe watched it ripple and sink, lost beneath the green-black veil. He crossed the canal the following evening. He didn't know what he expected to find. A note. A trace. A shoe print on the wet stone. But the alley was empty, and the walls held no answers. Still, he returned every day, hammer in hand, eyes on the opposite bank. Until one morning, a voice broke the silence. "You build like my grandfather did." She was standing behind him. Her name was Elena Vitali, 21 years old, and every bit as proud as her voice suggested. She spoke with the cadence of someone raised around books and dinner conversations filled with wine and politics. "My grandfather built the hospital near Fondamentinove," she said, stepping over Giuseppe's scattered tools. "And the theater. And 3 bridges." Giuseppe didn't respond at first. He wasn't used to conversation mid-build. But Elena didn't need prompting. She had a presence like a violin, elegant, precise, impossible to ignore. "I thought your building was another abandoned warehouse," she said. "Then I saw you. Every day. No machines. No noise. Just craft." He finally looked up. "I'm not a builder," he said. "No. You're something rare." She pointed to a half-finished archway. "That's wrong," she added, like a whisper. "It'll buckle when the wood swells. I can show you how to fix it." And just like that, she began to visit every afternoon. She never touched the tools but would sit on a crate, sketch in a small leather notebook, and offer observations between sips of espresso. She knew things he didn't. She had studied real architecture in Florence. But she never laughed at his methods, only improved them. Day by day, the building became more than walls. It became conversation. It became music. And Giuseppe began to realize something. She wasn't just fixing the house. She was fixing him. Summer came with its stubborn heat, and Cannaregio turned golden and heavy. The canals thickened with tourists, but Giuseppe and Elena worked through the din. She told him about her past in flashes. A father she never saw. A mother who spoke in riddles. A childhood of paintings, broken promises, and quiet loneliness. Her grandfather, the architect, had been the only constant. "He used to bring me here as a child," she said one day, "to this exact dock. He'd say, 'This side of Venice is the real one, the quiet one, the brave one.'" That evening, Giuseppe found a stone behind a loose brick in the old wall. Etched into its surface were initials, CV 1949. Carlo Vitali. Her grandfather. She hadn't known. And when he handed it to her, she held it like glass. They sat in silence as the church bells rang 7 times. Giuseppe's hands, once always in motion, now rested in his lap. Elena looked up. "Do you think it's possible to miss someone you never truly knew?" He nodded. Every day. September rolled in with rain and sharp winds. The wooden beams groaned under the weight of moisture, and Giuseppe battled to keep the roof from collapsing. Elena brought new drawings, more ambitious now. Skylights. Archways. Hidden compartments. "Why would a house need hidden spaces?" he asked, half laughing. She stared at him. Every Venetian house has secrets. That week, Giuseppe began to suspect she had one too. She would vanish for days, returning with red eyes and excuses. She said her mother had fallen ill, but her eyes said otherwise. One night, beneath a full moon and thick clouds, he found her standing in front of the house. Not sketching, not speaking, just staring. "Did you ever want to run away from the city?" she asked without turning. "No," he replied. "I wanted to belong to it." She looked at him then, her expression unreadable. And in that moment, Giuseppe knew something was wrong. Something more than illness. More than weather. Something that would soon tear everything apart. A week passed, and Elena did not return. Giuseppe continued working, but each hammer strike sounded lonelier than the last. The rhythm had gone. The laughter was gone. The sketches stopped appearing beside the tool bag. On the 8th morning, while sweeping dust from a narrow stone ledge beneath the window, he noticed something caught between the frame and the wall. A folded envelope, softened by moisture. It was addressed to E. Vitali, in handwriting he did not recognize. Inside was a single page. He read the first line and froze. "They know you've been returning to the house. You promised to stay away. It's not safe anymore. You're being watched." The rest was vague. A warning. A farewell. No signature. He read it twice. Then again. It felt like a piece of another story slipped into the pages of his own. Giuseppe didn't sleep that night. He stared out at the water, wondering what he had missed. What had she hidden? Why did this building, this simple half-home, suddenly feel like the center of something much larger? And then came the sound he would never forget. The crunch of footsteps in the alley behind him. Not hers, but someone else. Watching. By the following morning, Giuseppe had made a decision. He would finish the house, but not just as a home. As a message. He combed every brick, every plank, for markings. He found more initials, some carved faintly behind old wooden panels. Others painted beneath a layer of plaster. He uncovered a door he hadn't noticed before, sealed by age and a warped frame. It led to a small crawlspace beneath the floor, where the foundation stones touched brackish water. Inside were 4 things: a lantern, a rusted compass, a child's sketch of the building, drawn in charcoal, and a book bound in leather, almost falling apart. The title on the first page read, Vaults of the Silent City, CV 1962. It was a journal. Giuseppe flipped through brittle pages, eyes scanning diagrams, paragraphs, and symbols he didn't understand. There were notes about foundations, secret flood tunnels, warnings about corrupt architects who had traded parts of Venice's underbelly for favors during the Reconstruction years. Carlo Vitali had known. He had written everything. And now, someone wanted it hidden. Giuseppe understood, suddenly, why Elena had watched him from across the canal. She hadn't been curious. She had been deciding whether or not to trust him. Elena reappeared without warning, just as October began to chill the city. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes were sharp, more alert than ever. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said quietly, holding the journal. "You left it behind," Giuseppe replied. "Or maybe you wanted it found." She exhaled slowly, then sat. "My grandfather believed in honesty. In architecture as truth, every arch revealing its tension, every stone telling its purpose." She looked around at the half-finished room. He hid the truth because no one wanted to hear it. Venice eats its own history. She explained what Giuseppe had begun to suspect. A secret society of planners and developers had used post-war reconstruction to build influence beneath the city. Tunnels, vaults, illegal extensions, all hidden beneath legal architecture. Carlo had tried to stop it. When he failed, he disappeared from public life. Giuseppe didn't speak for a long time. Then, carefully, he picked up a hammer and turned back to the wall. "We finish it," he said. "Even if it means trouble? Especially if it means trouble." The sirens came at dawn. The Acqua Alta had arrived earlier than expected, rising tides pushed by distant storms, flooding the lower walkways and turning alleys into rivers. Giuseppe and Elena scrambled to raise tools, cover beams, protect what they could. But the water came fast, angry, and full of debris. Then came another sound. Not wind. Not water. Boots. 2 men, dark coats, no uniforms. One held a crowbar. The other carried a torch, which he did not light. They said nothing, just approached. Giuseppe stepped forward. "This is private property." The man with the torch raised an eyebrow. "Not if it's hiding something dangerous." They walked past him, straight to the wall with the hidden door. Giuseppe moved faster. He struck the frame with his hammer. The door fell, revealing the journal. Elena grabbed it and fled toward the crawlspace beneath the floor. But the men had seen. Giuseppe turned to block their path. And for a moment, time slowed. Wood creaked. Water rose. Elena's scarf floated like a ribbon in the air. Then everything exploded into sound. Yelling, crashing, footsteps, water spilling from all sides. The journal was gone. So was she. 3 days later, the house still stood. Barely. Part of the western wall had collapsed. The crawlspace had filled with brine and broken timber. No one knew what had happened, and the police refused to investigate. Officially, there had been no break-in. No suspects. No motive. Unofficially, Giuseppe was warned to stop building. But he didn't. He rebuilt the wall, restored the roof, replaced the ruined floor with stronger beams. And when people passed by, they paused. They noticed. They whispered, "That's the boy who built a house when everyone told him not to." But Giuseppe never claimed the house for himself. He finished it as Carlo had intended, with open windows, honest arches. And inside, beneath the staircase, he placed a stone, carved with one word, Vitali. Elena never returned, but her sketchbook did, wrapped in red cloth. Left at the doorstep one quiet morning, just after snowfall dusted the lagoon. Inside was a final drawing, not of the house, but of Giuseppe, standing alone, smiling,